What happens if you take the low out of the Mandalorian? Well, you get the Man-Darian, of course.
So Kuigar, I have chosen the Bo-Katan Mythosaur skull as the first project I'm going to show you guys how to make. It's a nice, easy, simple symbol that you can create. I've created about 9 inches in length and about 5 or 6 inches across. I don't know the exact measurements because I wasn't too worried. Now, I printed this out off the internet. It's not the best graphic because I want to show some common mistakes that I see people make and how to solve them. If I show you just how to do everything perfect from the beginning, then you have no idea how to negotiate problems. I like Yoo-hoo glue sticks. That's what I use to get my graphics off the paper onto the aluminum. Sometimes you need to give it overnight. So get your aluminum, copper, brass. You want a softer metal. I chose aluminum for this project because I like the look of aluminum. And it's got a nice hardness for what we're doing, but I went ahead and already glued it. So if you want to glue it down yourself, I should have shown this, but I didn't. Glue both pieces. Don't just glue one. And let the glue sit on both pieces for a moment. And then you get a really good adhesion between them. So you want the glue to like seep into the fibers of both the paper and the metal. This saw I got for $20 at KMS Tools. This saw I got for $500 at a jewelry supply place. Now that top part is your tensioning setup. You want to make sure your teeth point forward and down with the jeweler's saw blade. It's very important because you want it when you're pulling the saw down for that to be the cutting stroke. You don't want it to be on the upstroke because you won't have as much detail and control. Now with this fancy, really expensive saw, I bought this as a treat to myself for piercing work because I do an incredible amount of piercing work, and that's technically what this process is called when it comes to jewelry. Now, I don't like the noise that saw blade made, and it didn't record properly, so that's why I've cut out the audio. You want a ping, a very sharp, solid ping. If it sounds very tinny and like with an echo, then it's probably not the right tension. I use these Swiss-made Pike blades. For this project, we're using number 8 blades. It's a thicker, wider tooth, so it's a little bit more robust because I'm cutting a 1/4 inch aluminum piece to try and make this more challenging for me so that you know a little bit more of what to expect as you're doing this process. So I've sped this up 500% because you don't want to sit and watch me do this for 2 hours. This project took about 2 hours of cutting, I want to say, which I'm very fast. Now, if you're using something more like an 1/8 inch thick, then you're going to be cutting way faster than I would be with this. But I just wanted to kind of give you more of an idea of the problems. I'm also going to do a different saw path from left to right than I am going to be for the other side. Just in case you're curious as to why I didn't follow the saw paths, I'm actually not using the best saw paths. Every project that your saw path is going to change, you have to kind of learn over time what path is going to be the most optimal for you. Now, also, if you notice, in between the 2 different saw frames, they had a wider space on the red frame between the saw blade and the back of the throat for the saw. Now, normally I would use the most minimum distance saw I have available, but because the red saw blade or the red saw frame is aluminum, the weight doesn't make as big a difference, so it's as accurate and I can get the same level of detail as I can with the short steel frame with the black handle. Those black handled frames are great. If you're not doing an incredible amount of pierce work, just spend the $20 at KMS Tools and get yourself one of those. I'm not sure where you can get them in the States. But seriously, the top tensioning frame should be $25-$30. They're everywhere. And get yourself good blades. You're going to go through a lot of blades, but it's worth having the better blades. I love those Swiss ones. German ones are pretty good. I find they're about the same quality as the Swiss, only a little bit more expensive. And they are consumable. Because of the thickness of aluminum I'm cutting here, I actually go through a little bit more blades than you normally would. But I also have won awards for my saw work. So it's one of those, like, you kind of have to learn what works for you and go appropriate to that. So like if you start doing this project and you're breaking a blade every couple inches, don't get dismayed. That's how I started out. That's how everyone starts out. These blades are pretty cheap, but you have to buy them in a large bulk. So don't just buy 12 and think that that's going to last you for a year. Spend the $40 and get a gross of the blades. The gross is the large package that I showed there. The miniature package, when I showed the number, that's just one pack. There's about 12, I think, in each little bundle. So in the big pack, I think there's 120. It's worth it. They break down to like 30 cents each blade. And you're going to break them because you have to learn how the saw feels. But this is one of the most rewarding processes that is a simple skill to teach. And I'm all about teaching people skills that are able to be used in the most variety of ways. I've made machine parts with this process because these blades are accurate enough that when you get used to how they work and how they fit in the saw, you can do clockwork parts. Like I've actually helped, I can't remember the name, Luthien? No, the clockmakers make parts for their pocket watches and whatnot. And they are accurate enough that they keep time over a long period of time. So this is something you really can go wild with. I do pieces for my leatherworker friends. If they need to do a repeating pattern, I'll make them leatherworking tools so that when they wet the leather, they can stamp it and have these highly detailed pieces on their belts or pouches or what have you. And I get to do a cool project. I get to make a few dollars and they're happy because now they have a repeatable pattern that doesn't take them days to do. And the customer gets something that's unique to them or used in so few projects that it is a fairly unique project. This is the cornerstone of stuff I make. This is a basic, very easy to learn skill. You know, it's not like 3D printing where you just press a button and go away. You do have to learn a bit at the beginning, but once you get how much tension that the saw should have on each blade, it comes along very fast. And like I'm doing a very basic large project so you can see what I'm doing. Once you get more into this, you can do finely detailed Texas ties, bracelets, earrings. I've made parts for swords like this, tools. We rebuilt years ago a Nerf Vulcan machine gun. It fires rounds of foam darts, and we rebuilt the mech box because it was melting with the higher voltage. So instead of firing 3 rounds every 10 seconds, it was now firing 60 rounds every 10 seconds. And it would go through the full belt before you have a chance to blink. So we rebuilt the mech box. We did an actual machine with this medieval tool. So it's one of my favorites. I think most people, when you get into this, you're going to have an addiction to it. You're going to start wanting to put it into everything, and you can make beautiful, unique things that fit a variety of purposes. Getting aluminum for this blade is super easy. I didn't show the bench pin. The bench pin is the thing that I put the aluminum on here. It's just a hunk of wood. I carved it out of cherry. It's dual-sided. And then there's I think it's a 1.5 inch by 4 inch by 6 inch piece block underneath. So I can mount this in a vise, or I can put it C-clamps onto a table like I have here. And it's got a wide open space on one side and a very narrow clothespin style on the other, so that I can grip different things of different sizes, and I just move it to where I need it and how I want to support it. It's just kind of a neat, useful tool that it costs me nothing. I've been using this tool for almost 30 years now, and I have not taken care of it at all, but it's still fully functional. Everyone I know bases their bench pins off of this one. A lot of people make them smaller, but because I like to do large projects, mine is large. Find what works for you. It doesn't have to be the same dimensions as mine. It doesn't have to be the same style as mine. I just like the straight slit in the front with a widening base from that. It could be a 2x4 if that's what you really only have access to. Drill a hole, run a saw up it so that you can work your way towards the hole, and bolt it to a table. Thinner is generally better, but you don't want so thin that it flexes. This is a very steady frame that I've made, and it's bolted in and glued. Like those are 3-inch wood screws if you look towards the top of the skull there. You can make a variety of ways. And just because I do one of these paths a certain way doesn't mean you have to. Experiment, learn. It's great. It's so easy. And I've started out on this project cutting out the outside, and then I'm going to work in towards the internal cuts next. Not every project is that way. Most projects, especially if I'm doing finer detail pieces where I'm cutting out more material than I'm leaving, I'd want to start at the center and work my way out. But because this is such a large, heavy project, I want to remove the outside material so I can get to more spaces on the inside easier. So that's why I've chosen this particular process for this particular piece. In the future, I'll do a more detailed piece where you can see where doing it the opposite way would be more advantageous. I'm trying to limit myself also in this to very basic tools, so that way your cost to getting started is less. So you don't feel that you have to go and buy a fandom or anything like that. Better tooling just speeds things up. It doesn't make you better at doing this process. For example, if you didn't want to use a manual saw like I do, you can go and get a jigsaw and have a mechanical electric saw and do this. I know plenty of people that do that, but they don't get the detail I get. And if you were to switch between them, you'd probably be faster and still get the high detail, but you won't have the skill because it's in... Oh, see, okay, here, I wanted to show you that. The throat ran out of space, so I have to back my blade up. I'm just moving it up and down like as if I was sawing. But it's very gentle. I'm just pulling back very gently so that I don't snap the blade, because the blades are very brittle. And if you cut your finger, it will go deeper than you're expecting. These blades are very sharp, but they get dull very quick on brass and aluminum. They're a little bit better for copper. Copper is just very expensive to start with. So the outside is done. So that is a center punch. Get yourself any kind of hammer. I bought this cheap hunk of junk. It sits in my truck. Nobody steals it. It's just a ball peen, but it could be a claw hammer, whatever you got around. Hell, if you really want, you can use a hunk of wood to hit that. Or if you don't have a center punch, get a nail. A nail will also work. So that's a 1/16 inch drill bit. I'm putting in my cordless drill here. You got to be in forward. You don't want to be in reverse to drill. It won't work very well if you're in reverse. So I am just making sure it's tight. And then that little divot that I made with the center punch, I'm drilling that out. You'll be able to see it better in a moment. This is my first time recording myself making something. So I wasn't really thinking about the angles too much. It will get better, I hope. So I have 2 areas that require holes. You just slip that blade through the hole. I prefer to have it locked in on the bottom piece of the saw frame and then tighten it and adjust everything into the top frame. So there, I'm over exaggerating how this goes so that it's a little easier to see. So yeah, I just tighten that bit up, and then that lever tightens the blade. So the tension on the blade, if the blade is moving all over the place, it's way more likely to snap. So you want a good tension, but you don't want it so tight that the blade snaps from the tension, especially if you've lost a tooth or compromised the blade in some way. If it's too tight, the blade just snaps. So I'm working my way to the center, and I'm going around the outside line, and I'll make my way back eventually. And that's the easy way of cutting out the holes. I mean, you could drill this out if you really were a tenacious person, but you'd put thousands of holes in there, and then your filing would have an incredible amount of work to do. So I just love this process. It's so easy, and it lets me have a chance to zen out, really. This is like my personal meditation. Now, this video will be split up into 2 because I didn't want to make one video too long. This is just the basic workings of how to do this. You could actually leave your work at this stage when you're done cutting out the internal parts, and it would still be beautiful and unique and more than most people have done. But in the next video, I will be showing you how to polish the edges and, give form to the front. Because I want to separate the teeth. I want to bevel the horns. I want to give it a step between where the horn and the cheek is. The more detail you add to this, the more story it has. In a moment, you are going to see me back up and go to a hole with this blade, turn the saw, and back it into the furthest part that I've sawn. Now, the reason that I do this is because I want to make a very sharp, precise turn. You can do up to 90 degrees with this saw, and it's no problem at all. But if you want to do anything like 170 degrees, it's better to back the blade into where you want it and cut the detailed part from the edge forward. So whenever you want to do a tight turn, say 90 degrees or whatever, take the blade, and instead of pushing while you saw, you want to actually keep it in the same spot. Move the blade up and down and turn either the piece or the saw frame, depending on the size and detail of the piece you're working on. And that's what creates your tight corners. But sometimes it creates a rounded hole, especially if you're not used to doing that process. So I haven't got there yet. I thought I was a little closer in the video. Sorry. I've recorded this a few months ago and just have not had a chance to do a voiceover until today. But in a moment, you'll see what I'm talking about. I'm just going on the opposite end of where I was before. Also, the reason I'm trying to cut this out as one piece is because I want to use as much of the material as possible in a large piece so that if I have a project in the future that's an odd shape, I can slip in this material. I want to get every penny I can out of the material because I come from a starvation mindset. This was my living for a few years. This was how I paid for gasoline to get to and from my day job because they refused to pay me a decent wage. That was where I was talking about. I just backed the blade in. So, yeah, I still have that mindset when I'm trying to cut stuff. I want to save as much material as possible, and I don't want to get out of that mindset because whenever I do silver is such an expensive material that I want to make sure that I can use every scrap possible without having to melt it, because every time you melt silver, you lose a portion of it to evaporation. So, that just made a really nice tight corner in the end. I didn't do it on one side, but I did it on the other, just to show you different ways. They're both pretty tight. I'm pretty accurate at that. Find what works for you. So, now I'm on to the nose. As I said, this is going to be a two-part video. Now, I guess I should mention the way that my hand is. I'm trying to support the material on the bench pin as firmly as possible because wiggle is your enemy. If you let the piece wiggle, it will snap your blade, and it also makes your strokes less efficient, so it'll take you longer to go the same distance. So that's why I keep moving my fingers the way I do. I'm actually pressing down quite firmly. It's hard to tell from this angle. And I'm kind of using my hand like it's a sandbag. So that's why I spread out my fingers and support it as widely as possible in most places. I just want to be as accurate as I can. I don't want to snap blades. This is part of my process in how to be as efficient as possible because I take it as a personal challenge to use as few blades as possible. I cut out, you probably saw it earlier, I cut out when I snapped one of the blades because I don't think you need to see me putting a new blade in. I showed that process at the beginning. You will snap blades. You will snap a lot more blades than I make. So don't get dissuaded. It's a really fun process, and the more you get into this, the more creative you will get with it. It is a great, fun thing to do. You can do this in many places. I quite often go over to Burnaby Central Park and cut right there on a picnic bench, and people will come over and talk to me because they're not used to seeing people make things. So they want to know all about my process and where I'm from and all that. I've yet to have a bad experience with it. Like, they're just so fascinated that somebody could do metalwork at a park and everything I need fits in a backpack. So I've made a couple of friends doing that. So there you go. There's the cutout. And then next video, I will be showing you how to bevel those edges with a file. Woo! All right. See you, ladies and gentlemen, next time. Don't worry. There will be another video shortly. I've got the footage done. I just got to actually sit down and edit. Unfortunately, I work long weeks and don't have much time for this. I have spoken. Have a good night.
Hey, this is Josh from Star Wars Escape Pod, the podcast. Come and check us out weekly everywhere you find podcasts. May the Force be with you.